Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Hey, I'm really excited about today's episode, guys.
Yeah.
I will tell you why, because I've been waiting for this movie for years.
Yeah.
Like, some people get excited about the new Star Wars movie. Some people get excited about the Marvel superheroes. We're talking about our own paranormal superhero, Zak Bagans.
Zak Bagans. Demon House.
Demon House. Yeah, really, he is the guy. Okay, joining us today, obviously it's me and Wendy Lynn.
Hi.
And also Allison from Milwaukee Ghost. Say hello.
Hello.
And we got Scott Marcus from whatsyourghoststory.com. Hello, Scott.
Hey. Hey, guys.
All right. Let's set up a little bit about the Demon House, shall we? Number one, 2012, we start getting stories from Indiana about this strange reports of possession and exorcism happening to a family in Gary, Indiana, and this makes the national news. Do you guys remember when this happened?
Yeah, it's the wholesome home of Michael Jackson,
I
of
do.
course. Gary,
Right.
Indiana.
And it's right in the Midwest, kind of near us, and we've driven through Gary 1,000 times, Mike,
Right. Oh,
Just for the
Jesus
scenery.
Christ.
With the pedal to the metal.
on tour. Right. No, but it is not the type of town that you expect national news to come out of, I guess. It's
National news of the non-murder
of
variety.
that nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was all exciting because, like, come on, there is a exorcism happening in Gary, Indiana, something that's making the news. So we got to hear more about it. And
Definitely.
it was covered by the Indianapolis Star. And they really cover it well in their kind of, it's a blanket story that maybe covers the entire thing called The Exorcisms of Latoya Ammons. And Latoya Ammons is a young mother, a single mother living in Gary, and she's got 3 kids, a 12-year-old girl, a 9-year-old son, and a 7-year-old son. And some very weird things start happening in this house she lived on Carolina Street in Gary, Indiana. And so when you guys first started hearing about this story, is there anything that particularly struck you about it, or that you were like, this is really an interesting case, or something that either sounds crazy or not crazy?
Well, yeah, I was excited about it because I have done a little bit of research about Midwestern exorcisms and possessions. And so I was like, wow, it's happening again. And I was like, the part about the social worker and others in the medical profession witnessing one of the sons walking up the wall backwards. And I thought
Yes.
that was compelling because it reminded me of
Terrifying.
descriptions of other possessed persons from the past, being, having to be dragged down from the ceiling, like the Earling exorcism in Earling, Iowa in 1928 reminded me of that exorcism case, which we should put. We talked about it, so we should definitely put that one in the show show notes.
We did talk about it in our exorcism episode, but the episode of Carl Saiga.
Oh,
We talked about it in that episode.
yeah,
the thing is,
and I think in the Bloody
Earling,
Gladster
Minnesota. Oh yeah,
episode
and,
too, because it inspired the movie The Exorcist.
and also wasn't that taken care of by the exorcist extraordinaire Theosophus Riesinger?
Yes, Theophilus. We love Theophilus Riesinger.
Yes, the greatest Wisconsin exorcist of all time.
Yes,
Theophilus.
Wisconsin's warrior priest. That's what
who-
his compatriots
Father
called
T
him.
Money. Yeah.
We admire him very, very much. But okay, the thing is, So this starts making the news, and Allison, you're absolutely right. That's the one thing that separates this story from the regular thing you read in the Daily Star or the National Enquirer is the fact that a police captain in Gary, Indiana, says that a strange thing happened to him. The social worker who went to investigate the case, she's freaked out by it, and she says she sees weird things. And that's the thing, is a lot of times when people talk about possession and their kids are acting all crazy, it's due to some kind of abuse or things happening in the family where the kid's acting out and they blame it on the devil instead of just
taking responsibility.
Absolutely. And so what happens in 2011, we'll give you a little backstory, and then we're going to get to the movie, because I know everybody here is probably listening, like they're waiting with bated breath for the masterpiece of cinema that is Demon House.
It is available on Google, Mike?
Yes.
So where did you get the movie?
We got it on Google Play because we were staying. We'll get to that because actually, we made.
I
Demon
just want
House
people
fun.
to know that they can watch it. It is available to watch. It's not in the theaters,
So
but
if they want to, they can pause this, watch it, and pick
Exactly.
up
and come on
here.
back. And we encourage it. You can rent it for like
Yes.
$6. Don't bother with the HD. SD is fine. You don't need to see close-ups of Zak Bagans that much. But the
Speak
thing
for
is
yourself.
that you can get a Google Play, iTunes, everywhere. Or I think there was a few cities where it actually was playing in the movie theater.
right.
So you can see a 25-foot tall Zak Bagans as he takes on the devil personally.
Oh, and well, then how big is the demon? If the demon was supposed to be 12 foot tall,
Right.
in meat space, in cinema space, how tall is that? That's freaking huge.
You don't even see the demon's head. So the screen is so big.
And it's so
So
terrible. You wouldn't want to see the demon's head. So terrible. Like a cloaca.
What starts happening in 2011, they say they move in to this place. And this is what LaToya Hammond said, that she moved in and like the first week, there's an infestation of black flies. And of course, the devil, flies are associated with demonic things because they're just associated with feces.
Putrid, rotten.
Filth,
Yeah,
unclean, the unclean creatures.
Right, the devil. Also, I mean, that's the, they call that pig's head in the Lord of the Flies, specifically because that was a name for the devil. And so the black flies start infesting the house right away. And she says, and she lived there with her children and her mother. Okay, so we've got 5 people living in the house, the 3 children, their mother, and her mother, all living there. And it's basically the people telling the story are LaToya and her mother. And they said they can't get rid of the flies.
And that was a thing in Amityville as well.
I was going to say, yeah, Chris Quarantino talks about that, and he says that, yeah, we had flies, but it's nothing like what you saw in the movie. He made it sound much more like a natural occurrence.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like,
As
man, we had some
opposed to-
crazy flies. Okay, so Chris Quarantino, just so you guys playing along at home, he is a member of the Lutz family, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so he's the youngest member of the Lutz family. So he was 7 years old when all the Amityville stuff went down. And that's actually one of the things that Zak Bagans talks about. In the intro to the film, he says that this might be one of the most haunted houses since the house in Amityville in the 1970s. Okay, we have different...
Zak Bagans is pretty good, Mike, but you got to slow it down just a little bit.
There's a little too much Keanu Reeves in there.
Okay, fair enough.
But it's good. You're close.
Whoa.
That's more Keanu right there.
I mean, there are various opinions on the Amityville house, whether it's a real thing or whether it's a hoax. Interestingly enough, some of the things that people use to disprove the Amityville is that the author had all the, Jay Anson, when he was writing it, that he had some of the details wrong. Like he'd say on this particular night, the moon was full. And then people said like, there was no full moon. There was no moon that night.
Man, that's an easy one too.
Yeah.
Right. But Jay Anson, I'm reading some stuff that he died like 1980 of a heart attack. But he's talking about his writing process, and he goes, I didn't even pay attention to that kind of thing. Like he was doing creative, he had like a creative license on some of the descriptions and everything, and he was just going off of hours of transcriptions of interviews. So
Okay, and then he was painting a picture around it that was maybe less than truthful.
Right.
Yeah. And
Go ahead, Alice.
I just wanted to interject, with the whole Mothman thing. And you can see more of my videos at youtube.com/Mothman.
Okay, get the plug out of the way.
Get the plug out of the way. But anyway, that's one of the things that I ran into with investigating the different accounts of the Chicago Mothman was the facts not matching up. It's like, is there a full moon? The report says there's a full moon. Nope, there wasn't a full moon that night. Just matching up the basic facts didn't work. So why would you believe the rest of the story? So and then we found out from Madeline Kate from the another plug from the video podcast Measuring the Circle, when she interviewed Lon Strickler, that he admitted that he will rewrite the stories to make it a more interesting narrative. So herein lies the problem.
That is the difference between someone like Jansen, who was a novelist, who's not an investigative journalist, who's not creating something in order to make you believe it. Like maybe, I feel like John Keel, when he wrote the Mothman Prophecies, that was something he was trying to do. And we will talk, the reason I think that this kind of conversation is important, because what's Zak Bagans trying to do here?
Yeah.
Is this an investigative journalistic movie? Because that's part of what sells it for us. The fact is, it's a real thing. He's going to a real place.
Yeah, reality TV. That's where he's supposedly from. How much reality is really in it?
So when these guys talk about, well, we were just, adding some embellishment in order to make it scarier or whatever, you are completely ruining the verisimilitude for it.
Ooh, nice word.
Thanks. I swallowed a dictionary before the podcast.
30 points for you.
I swallowed a thesaurus.
But that's the idea that they're ruining it for us because we want to have it as real as possible in order to get as scared as possible.
Right. So it's a sticky wicket for sure.
But adding a little creepy music in the background.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good point.
I'm okay with that.
Like, where's the line there? And I do get it, as you were articulating about a novelization versus a police report style thing. And getting back to Zach and Ghost Adventures, I'll say I've seen just about every single episode ever released of Ghost Adventures. And
Scott's a big fan of the, in case you guys don't know.
I think I sense a bro crush.
I'm hooked.
Come at me. Come at me, man.
One of the fun things is to watch it and laugh at it, as we had a fun time doing in Austin when we were watching Demon House. But one of the first episodes of Ghost Adventures I ever watched, the one that I think hooked me, was an investigation of Preston Castle. It was this kind of reform school prison for underage kids in the Bay Area in California. And it was this like big Gothic building up on the top of the hill. Actually, it still stands. And I thought, oh my gosh, well, at the time I was living in LA, I want to go up there, find this place and look around myself. And as it's depicted in Ghost Adventures, it's this isolated building, far from society, up on the top of a mountain. You look on Google Earth and you're like, no, it's in the middle of a subdivision. It's not isolated at all, which, when you start to, even though they maybe didn't say, but they gave the appearance, they made it seem a certain way. And when you can debunk something that's that easy, you start to wonder about anything else.
Yeah.
The physical traits of a place. Okay, if you're going to lose my faith at something so basic, how are you going to let me make a leap of faith that Zach is getting possessed here or something else extraordinary is happening?
And how do we get to anything real in the midst of so much nonsense in the air and everywhere? I mean, as investigators, I think we really want to get to the truth, and it's really super hard to get to that when, everybody is invested in the power of story. We understand that, as, being involved in ghost tours, but, again, where do we draw the line? Where does truth come into this? Because people are watching films like these and, thinking that's what they're getting is the truth. And, how do you balance narrative and reality?
Well, I think that news magazine shows do it very well every single week. So we have a template on how you balance reality and the story with 60 Minutes and 2020. I don't even know if 2020 exists anymore.
Well, 2020 is the murder of the week.
Dateline.
2020 and Dateline too, yeah.
Yeah,
they're not what they were.
Television for terrifying you.
But the murder of the week is kind of what let's not delude ourselves that we're not dealing with salacious stories and things like that. I mean, these are ghost stories. And
I know.
Right. So let's not try to be better than Martin Bashir or whatever who's on 2020. Okay, but the thing is, so let's keep talking about LaToya Ammons.
All right.
And you guys are getting a big dose of our editorialism in here too.
Yeah. Okay. We have to actually report
Sure.
Right.
the story.
And this is taking exactly from the Indianapolis Star, which is a reputable newspaper where she did her original interviews and where this was originally covered. So what happens is her mother, Rosa Campbell, she starts being freaked out about the flies, and she thinks that's weird. But they're living in the place, and everybody's got to live day to day. People got to work, they got to go to school, do the whole thing. What happens though is they start hearing footsteps coming from the basement. They check, no one's there. So they lock the door too into the basement, and they still hear footsteps, and that starts being scary. Rosa Campbell wakes up in the middle of the night, sees a shadowy figure pacing her living room. She runs out, says she doesn't see anybody there, but does see wet boot prints in the living room. Okay. And then in 2012, in springtime, March 10th, so about 6 years ago, something really crazy happens. It's 2:00 in the morning, and Campbell and Ammons, so the mother and daughter, are still up because they're mourning the death of a friend. So one of their friends died. And what happens is they run into the 12-year-old's bedroom, the 12-year-old granddaughter's bedroom, and they see she's levitating above the bed. Right?
Yeah.
Sleeping above the covers.
Not the way you want to find your kid.
3 feet above.
It's probably ergonomically awesome, though.
Yeah. Right. Levitating be sweet. I mean, Chris Angel, he made a whole career on that whole levitation on the sidewalk bit.
Yeah.
And so they start seeing that, and that freaks him out. The girl descends back to the bed, wakes up, and says she doesn't remember anything that happened. So the mother and the grandmother, they start seeing things, and the kids start acting funny. They start talking back. The 7-year-old starts talking to somebody who isn't there. He says that he's talking to people. He's got imaginary friends, and the imaginary friends are telling him scary things. They bring in some clairvoyance. And it's interesting that in the story, they don't use the term psychics, they use the term clairvoyance.
Many times.
Right, clairvoyance. So clear vision means you can see things that other people can't see. That's the meaning of the word clairvoyant. It's also a sweet song by Iron Maiden called The Clairvoyant. The clairvoyants say that the house is besieged by more than 200 demons. So now...
Again, quantifying it. It always
right.
makes me suspicious.
Yeah,
Like-
one wonders how they all fit.
How do they... Again, I want to know how they do roll call to determine how many.
And I really think that if you're going to put 200 demons in a place, the devil should contribute to the heating bill, because Indiana gets cold in the winter.
Yeah, and the devil.
Well, you think that place would be a lot warmer, actually.
Right.
There's such a close connection to hell.
Absolutely.
Or even just like, he's like, you know what? I got some cots for everybody.
I love the roll call idea. Okay, Beelzebub.
That is cozy, though.
Check. Ball.
Has anybody
check.
seen Jimmy? He's in the back.
And then it's like the Waltons, but like two. Good night, Jim Bag. Good night, Beelzebub.
Good night, Mom. But that's the thing. So they try to do the clairvoyance, suggest a whole, like the clearing with the sage, the usual BS that they tell you to do.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Really quickly. In the article, it said that they took sage and sulfur. I've never heard of sulfur being used as... Is that a common thing?
I'd never heard of that either. Let's ask Allison. She's a clearer.
Yeah.
Well, they're mixing traditions. So the sage comes from many Native American groups use it, and I teach at a Native American school, and we sage the classroom. And there's also other medicines. The 4 medicines are tobacco, sage, sweetgrass, and cedar. And
Is sweetgrass just pot?
no, it's really awesome.
Sweetgrass, man.
I love sweetgrass.
So is pot.
Well, you would know, Mike. But
Hey,
anyway,
man.
the sage and the cedar, they both clear out the negative, and the sweetgrass brings in the positive. And the tobacco, you burn it to pray. The smoke takes your prayers to the Creator.
And the creator is the Marlboro Man.
So, well, not that. It's sacred tobacco. Anyway.
It's not just Cools.
No, not Cools. No menthol. But anyway, the sulfur, I'm not sure exactly where that comes from, but I know that sulfur is associated with the devil, those sulfurous smells, which we've talked about.
Right. Brimstone.
In our previous episodes with Joshua Cutchin.
Right.
But I think
Mary Marshall talked about it a lot too, that the smell of sulfur when she first met a demon when she was 16 years old.
Right.
Which led her down this path of darkness.
yeah.
So I'm sorry, I know it's a small detail, but I was curious because it said they burned sage and sulfur throughout the house. And I'm like, that seems like, I don't know, contradictory maybe? Or
do you think maybe they just wanted a free place to be as flatulent as they wanted?
Oh,
They're like,
that's a pretty far stretch. You
well,
have to really want that freedom.
we are going to go to the Olive Garden and then we are going to clear this
Oh,
house.
no.
I'm over at the hoodoofoundry.com right now.
Okay.
And there's an article, What Can I Do with Sulfur? And there's Get Rid of Debt, Keep the Law Away. And but then one that might be specific, you can keep specific enemies from opposing you. So maybe that's why sulfur was their weapon of choice in this one. And that's, again, in the world of hoodoo.
yeah.
And it said when they did this, the smoke was so thick they could hardly breathe. So they really, they were going for it.
And that's interesting too, because when you talk about mixing traditions, so you take the sage from the Native American tradition, and then we take the hoodoo tradition, which is more of the American slave tradition, because there's hoodoo, which is what they had to hide the animism, religion and stuff, and the rituals from the slaves had to hide that from the masters in America, while in like the French colonies, the voodoo, they didn't have to hide it because they combined it with Catholicism. So it's kind of cool that we have a mix of things here, the hoodoo and the Native American tradition. The problem is, though, none of it worked.
But and it also, I mean, it sounds like they were just very desperate, to get this out of their house. So even in the article, it said a lot of these things they found online. So they're probably like, okay, if we do this and this and this, these are all things that get rid of demons. So who knows what actual effect that might have.
They're just trying everything.
They went to exorcistmd.com.
As you would. Yeah.
Okay, sorry to sidetrack the discussion.
No, that's good.
Good one.
Well, the thing is that they said some nights they had to go sleep in a hotel, and some of the things that started experiencing, youngest boy, 7 years old, he sits in a closet, talks to his imaginary friend. His imaginary friend is describing what it feels like to be killed. And that's the thing they're talking about, which is disturbing.
Very disturbing.
The 7-year-old once flies out of the bathroom as if he'd been thrown. A headboard smacks into the daughter, the 12-year-old, a wound that needs stitches. She talks about feeling choked, held down so she couldn't speak or move. She said she heard a voice that said she'll never see her family again and she won't live another 20 minutes. So that they're experiencing these things in the house, like the house is, or the spirits in the house, the 200 demons are doing horrible things to them. They take it to their doctor, Dr. Jeffrey, and I'm going to butcher this, Onyekwu, Jeffrey Onyekwu. I can't say it right, so sorry, Jeffrey Onyekwu. But he says, this is bizarre. I've never heard anything like this in my life. He's still skeptical about everything. So when you talk about the people who started seeing things, what happens is Department of Child Services has to come in.
Sure, yeah.
So
that sounds like it's a child abuse case.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, my kid needs stitches because the demon did it to her.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And also kids acting out, just behaving, talking about, I know what it feels like to die and stuff like that. That's just behaviorally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Suspicious.
And I have to say, so if you guys out there in podcast land haven't gone on a lot of ghost investigations or don't know too much about it, I think the one of my friends best put it was that he used to go on a whole bunch of these ghost investigations. And in the end, he quit because it was too sad for him. He had a criminal justice degree. And he said the whole thing was too sad because he kept on going to these places. And he goes, the real issue here is not some kind of spiritual invasion. The real issue is that the parents are abusing the kids. And he said that was in case after case to eventually he was he stopped believing in ghosts for a long time. And so this
stop believing in humanity.
Right. He stopped believing in the human spirit on either side of the veil. And so in the medical notes, the doctor is writing about this. Dr. Arnie Kurer, he writes delusions of ghost in the home, hallucinations. So he's treating this whole thing as a psychiatric issue. Well, what happens next is that the kids end up going to the hospital where they're going to visit this doctor, and the doctor thinks it's crazy. But while they're at the hospital is the whole thing where the youngest boy is lifted, he's thrown into the wall with nobody touching him. And then he climbs the wall and people see it. Right, he climbs the wall
backwards. Gary, so he moonwalks the wall.
Nice.
Yes.
Right, Gary.
Well, the article said that he was holding his grandma's hand when it happened, and he kind of went backwards up the wall and over her and landed on his feet. So this is crazy. I mean, this is the first part of the article where you really are okay, there's other witnesses besides the direct family.
Bingo.
That are attesting to this.
Right.
That this kid is Jackie Chan.
But we've talked in the past, again, about those 4 signs of possession. And this seems to be perhaps one of them, the supernatural strength or supernatural feats type of sign.
Right.
From the 4 signs.
Here's the 4 signs of possession. Knowing the unknowable. That's where you know something. There's no possibility you can know it. Understanding unlearned languages. So if somebody speaks to me in Swahili, I could understand exactly what they're saying.
Or speak it.
Right. I'd be throwing it out there with the clicks and everything. Aversion to sacred objects. They see crosses, holy water, things like that. And supernatural strength. So you don't have to have all the signs for the church to think you're authentically demonically possessed, but 3 out of 4, you can't really fake it. If you have 3 out of 4, the chances are that the priest thinks you can't really fake it. And that's what happens when they go to see Father Mike Magino. And he even does an exorcism on LaToya. He does several exorcisms with the family. And in the movie, they talk about this too, because Mike Magino is featured several times in the movie.
He's all over that movie.
Right. But he starts saying that weird things happen to him, that he's mysteriously thrown off his bike. And they do a reenactment in the film too, which is, we'll get there. About the film's quality reenactments.
They are really good.
And so he does this, and he gets thrown off his bike. He also says that he's looking up some different demon names. And I don't know if he says this in the movie, but he talked about this when he did the interview at the Chicago Ghost Conference on Friday night in 2015. He mentioned that when he reached a certain page that had a certain demon's name, the computer turned off, the printer started acting funny, and I could have told him that Windows 95 was unreliable.
Wah, wah.
But the real thing is he's like the computer started freaking out. So the demons started having an effect on the technology. And he goes in and he's doing an interview with Dave Schrader, Darkness Dave from Darkness Radio. You guys, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have heard it.
Now beyond the darkness.
Now beyond the dark.
That's right.
And Darkness Dave is he's such a great MC and a funny guy. But he's doing the interview. And so the next night, it's funny, we're at Chet's Melody Lounge and Dave and I are sucking down $4 Lagunitas. And we start chatting and I'm like, hey, Dave, that demon that the father was talking about, you guys were acting all scared and everything. I'm like, you can tell me his name.
Mike.
I'm like, you can just tell that name to me. I'm like, I'm not scared. You can tell me that demon's name.
Go for it.
You're trying to ply him with alcohol.
Absolutely. And he's like,
come on, give it up, Dave. You know you want to.
Right. He's like, no way. He's like, I don't know, man. I can't talk about it. I can't even say that name. I'm too scared. And I'm
really?
Like,
for real?
Yeah. I'm sitting there, I'm poking on him 10 minutes. And Darkness Dave was like, nope.
If there's a lesson to be learned here, you can trust Darkness Dave with your secrets.
Yeah. I know.
He won't spill.
Through the threat of damnation, at least.
Yeah.
Right. The thing is, though, they all go through this exorcism and stuff because the kids are really acting out. The 7-year-old even says things, he's like, it's time to die. I will kill you.
And it says their eyes are bulging out and they're doing these creepy, like, demonic grins and stuff. Like, imagine that.
Oh, yeah.
As a kid.
And the older brother starts headbutting his grandma.
Yeah.
Like, whoever headbutted their grandma. Like, that's got to be the devil. Okay, so according to the original Department of Child Services report, and this is an account corroborated by the nurse as well as the child services worker who was there, the social worker who was there, and she's interviewed in Demon House too. So she even says like, "Oh yeah," he interviews her over Skype. So obviously he had a big budget for the movie. They said the 9-year-old had a weird grin, walked backward up a wall to the ceiling. He then flipped over Campbell, the grandmother, landing on his feet, and he never let go of his grandmother's hand. So everybody corroborates this incredible gymnastic move. And I think that was the first thing that made me think like, okay, there's something here. And so it's continued demonic activity. And eventually, Father Magino, I don't even know if I'm saying it right, but it's spelled Maginot. He does the exorcisms, and he even says like the exorcism isn't effective until it's in Latin, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. Yeah, they did like 3 of them, and the third one he did in Latin, I think.
Well, and
he said it.
We know, from our exorcism research that exorcism is not a magic bullet. I mean, it's not that you do it one time and, oh, you're done. People who have been demonically possessed will often have to be have exorcisms for the rest of their lives. It's like gets better and then it kind of comes back, and so it's not a one-shot deal ever.
It's like going to a Tony Robbins seminar. Like that first couple weeks, you feel great, but you got to keep going back in order to keep that same feeling. You keep walking over them hot coals. Well, no, the reason I'm saying that it's like why they have church every week. If you're a religious person, you don't go to church one time and then like, okay, that's it. God, I got God. We're good. Like there's a reason that they repeat these things.
Right.
Humans seem to need that kind of repetitive habit.
Yeah, it's a process. It's a journey. It's not, oh, you're done. It's
yeah.
And I don't think we should expect it to be, because like you said, Mike, and other things in life, that's the way it is. So it's not different with exorcism.
Absolutely.
And the devil never stops.
The devil don't quit, yo. But also, if we continue talking about this honestly with the kids, further on in the Indianapolis Star, they talk about a clinical psychologist who interviews the youngest son, and she goes, "The boy only acts possessed when he's challenged, redirected, or asked questions he doesn't want to answer. He seems coherent and logical, except when he talks about demons. And his stories change every time he told them." And so she doesn't think they're psychotic or anything. She just thinks that
they're kids and they play you.
Right, there's some kind
anything that can be used against you will be used.
And there's some kind of delusion going on, But the police come to the home. Police officers think that something weird's going on. There's also police captain in Gary, Indiana, Charles Austin. And he's the guy in the video. He's like the bald guy that talks about after he visits the house, he's driving away and his radio starts getting messed with and starts hearing weird things. The seat starts going back and forth on its own. And then he hears a voice say, "Who in there?" and it comes to the radio. And, there's a Gawker article actually from 2014 that says local police confirm that this house is haunted by demons. So you think about Gawker in 2014, this is the leading tabloid of the internet, millions of views every single day. And the leading tabloid of the internet is talking about that this house, because the local police, because Charles Austin, who's featured extensively in Demon House, and he actually is probably the most entertaining part about Demon House.
He's awesome. I might go as him for Halloween.
he's a star. Like he's a star.
Is Who in there a meme now? Because
if there's not, maybe we'll make it. If not,
it's a meme in the Sunspot van.
Yeah. Well, even in the movie, the other police officers,
Yeah.
You know, when they go near the house and they don't want to go in, and then they start swearing, swearing up a storm.
You got to bulldoze that MF down.
Some people think that because those police were after hours, they think that Zak had paid them to say those lines.
Really?
That was one place I read online that said that because the Hammond, Indiana police chief, I mean, he's also featured in the movie. He's the guy that took that ghostly photo. There's a photo from the house, and it looks like there is a white shadow, like seen in one of the windows, and it's pretty good. I mean, it could be pareidolia when you're seeing what looks like a person.
Pareidolia or matrixing.
Pareidolia, yes. I already had my $5 word today with verisimilitude.
I know, right?
So you can rack up some debt now.
You got your quota.
I only get 2 a day. What eventually happens, the family moves out. Things start dying down. The next renters in there don't see the same thing. Then, after the renters are in there, Zak Bagans buys the house. Sight unseen.
Yeah.
And I was really, when I first heard about this story, I'm like, oh, Zak Bagans just bought this house, like sight unseen. Like, that's amazing. And it sounds really impressive until you find he bought the house for $35,000.
I think we should have bought the house. Come on.
Yeah.
It's amazing some ghost hunting group didn't buy it.
I
Right.
know,
I mean,
that's- the
right?
price was
We
right.
got to
Seriously.
it before we could.
It's only $35,000. And this is actually one of the reasons that the Skeptical Inquirer, who wrote a whole story about the 200 Demons house, and this is before the Demon House movie came. They write it in 2014. They have a whole story on like debunking this kind of phenomena and the demonic possession. One of the reasons that they don't find a lot of truth in these stories is because the people before and the people after have no stories going on. And even in the movie, Zak goes and there's some squatters living in the house when he shows up. And he's like, "What are you doing in my house?" And
Come at me, bro.
you got it. Come on. There ghosts in there? I'm coming in. Let me at him. I'll splat him.
Who in there?
So, but the squatters are like, yeah, it's not really haunted.
Well, until he brought some money out, and then all of a sudden,
Oh, that's right.
I got
Actually
some
realized-
stories I could tell you.
yeah,
He's talking to the Zak Bagans.
right.
All right.
And so let's talk about Demon House. Okay?
Yeah.
Let's just get it out there. If you guys have not seen Demon House yet, if you didn't get our warning in the beginning, it basically is a 90-minute version of Ghost Adventures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and they warn you. They do warn you. You got to give it to them there that they warn you that watching this movie could result in your possession. I mean,
Right.
because
You're putting yourself at risk by watching this film.
that's
Yeah.
right. It says right there that hey, we're just telling you, you could be possessed by through electronic devices. Hint.
They don't want to be held liable.
Your TV, your computer, your phone that you're watching this movie on.
And that's straight out of William Castle.
Yeah, I was going to
You know, the
say, it's
whole
like the old
idea-
days where you got to sign the releases to go see the movies.
Yeah. It's like, just make sure you know. Watch at your own risk, brother.
That's right. And the whole like cursed storyline comes right in the intro with the obligatory F-bomb, of course. And
Well, it is on the big screen now, so you can say the F word as much as you want. You know?
yeah. Well, I was like, just to see him, walking in the distance, muscles bristling. A man challenged by the supernatural. And I was just thinking, he was like, oh, this really, this is the one. I thought this would be a good idea. I didn't know, and the whole cursed storyline. I'm like, guess who's a cursed man? Oh, it's Zak.
Right. Of course, Zak Bagans is.
I mean, he's always going for.
This is the one case that really effed me up. And
That's right.
It really, and he's hanging out with his crew, and his crew looks like he picked them up at like the local truck
I'm
stop.
going to say the circus went out of business,
Oh,
so
you guys, come on.
No, really, I'm just kidding. He went to the county fair, and whoever was operating the gravitron, he's like, "You're coming with me."
Well, you obviously understand physics if you're operating the gravitron, so
Well, you don't.
That's the kind of scientist we need.
You don't have to dress like a New York businessman to
hold a
explore
camera.
and invite. Exactly.
No.
So I don't think their looks
absolutely.
are necessarily relevant. To
And
that.
plus, when you say to somebody who wants to spend their winter vacation in Gary, Indiana, you're not going to get the cream of the crop. I get it. So he goes and he buys the house sight unseen for the princely sum of $35,000. and then he
the
kicks
horror ensues.
and he kicks the squatter out. So he goes to the movie. They do a little bit of investigation. He can't talk to LaToya Ammons.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to the house and he can't even talk to I thought we would have the whole family in there. Like the kids would be in there and
primary
everything.
characters in the story.
Right. And this might be why maybe he gave up on trying to make the movie good because he's like, I can't even get the people in. We don't have to feel bad for Zak Bagans. He's got a frickin' museum.
No, but there were other things that, I mean, he tried to talk to everybody else around the family that, experienced,
yes,
and he was able to. So
he did, but you find out when you get in there, like in the first 20 minutes, you find out that the family has like sold their rights to the story.
Yeah, they're out.
So they can only talk they're done. So he goes to the house and you see him like hang out in the house. And maybe if he dressed up in a suit or something, like it did not show up in like the hat and the sunglasses and wearing gloves with frickin' skeleton hands on him.
Call
like
me
he's
Hollywood.
like he's in the Cobra Kai from Karate Kid. He's wearing these hands, and then they're like, no, "We're not going to do it. We're nobody's going to talk to him except the brother."
Yeah.
Yeah. That's hard. I mean, as somebody who, tries to drill down and talk to the witnesses, I mean, it can be really hard, because of fear of ridicule, all these different things, but maybe the fact that it's not true. I mean, I don't know. People are reluctant to talk about these things, sadly.
Yeah.
But they're not afraid of ridicule. They've already talked to the Indianapolis Star. Like they've already
they made all the psychological reports and all those things available to the press to evaluate. So in the article they're talking about how she was particularly forthright with all that information, whereas usually in a case like this, people keep it zipped
behind lock and key. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Well, in this case, she sold their story, right? That's what you said, Mike? To
That's
someone
what
else.
he said because they go, "Oh, is there money involved?" And the brother's like, "Yeah, money's involved."
They're talking with another producer. Yeah.
And so it seemed to me as though they were trying to make it look like, well, they didn't want to talk to us because they didn't want to talk to anyone like who had been in the house recently, because they said that they kicked the brother out of the house at the end because he had like shaken hands with Zak, who had been in the house, and they didn't want anything, they didn't want him bringing the bad spirits back. But I kind of had the impression that it was more about the contract.
dinero.
They probably have a signed contract.
And that's something a little surprising to see out of a Zak production, because there's a whole chapter of, hey, is this whole thing a hoax and is it all financially fueled? And it's kind of unusual to see that side come up and actually presented well, that, we're going in with a skeptical mindset to some extent. And he presents that possibility and kind of allows us all to soak that in a bit. And you see how fueled by money and the idea that, hey, we could be the next Conjuring. A lot of the parties involved are, including the squatters, who are like, well, what have you seen here? Well, I'm not going to say anything until there's an agreement. Like, are you kidding me? You're squatting in my home.
Right. This guy has no legal, like, Zak can have him arrested, and this guy's trying to negotiate the rights to his story.
Yeah, he's like, have you seen anything? Well, once we have a contract, I'll tell you some stories. Like, I'll tell you what I saw. Like, what?
Who's this guy? The guy that doesn't have a house has a lawyer?
exactly.
Get out of here.
But getting back to the not being able to talk to the family thing, that would have been extremely nice to see in the
Right, that's the first thing. Like, hey, like maybe Zak should have thought of that before he started the movie.
Well, on that note, unlike all the Ghost Adventures episodes, Jeff Blanger was not the historian researcher on this one. Usually Jeff is the one that goes and lines up so much in advance. And of course, you can listen to a previous podcast episode that was awesome that you guys did with him. But yeah, I looked it up, and Jeff was not involved with this one. Neither was Dave Schrader, who's also involved, Darkness Dave, that is, who's usually involved with the more recent Ghost Adventures episodes. So I think the lack of the research department maybe showed in this aspect.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think Zak wanted to do the whole thing himself. Like, that's when he was like, directed by Zak Bagans, a Zak Bagans production, a Zak Bagans movie.
I mean, he's basically Orson Welles
Zak
now.
Bagans.
Well, it was his house.
He is.
And I'm a
he is
cursed man. And look at these biceps.
right. If that's the Orson Welles of paranormal reality TV, but this is what we got, friends.
But I have to say, he did put his money where his mouth is when he locked himself in there overnight.
He did.
Like that.
He did. And
it was like, okay, alone, completely alone.
so let's set up things. We're watching Demon House, and we're in Austin, Texas. and we're staying at our friend's house in Austin during South by Southwest. And just to set it up a thing here, it's a Sunday night, and we're all looking for something to do because the main portion of the music festival is over. And we're like, let's watch Demon House. And Wendy, Scott, and I are there, and everybody else is not a weirdo. So we have to make them. We have to like say like, okay, this is why we want to watch Demon House. And they're like, okay, that might be fun. So there's another band there. There's our patron Vic, who appeared on an episode to tell us about the Midget Mansion in San Antonio a couple of years back. And so we're all hanging out. We're like, okay, let's make this fun, and let's make a Demon House drinking game. And so what were the rules in the Demon House drinking game?
Well, any really crazy cutaway B-roll type shot that's just extreme for no reason. That was take a drink.
Mm-hmm. Take a drink whenever Zach does anything particularly douchebaggy.
How are you guys still alive?
We made it about 19 minutes before we needed the next round.
Well, and in full disclosure, I did fall asleep. Not once, but twice.
It was alcohol poisoning.
I had to rewatch the movie like 3 times to get through the whole thing. So,
whenever somebody said something ridiculous and nobody challenged it,
yeah.
Oh yeah, there was
the rule.
Replaying evidence an absurd amount of times.
Yeah.
That's you might as well drink your way through that.
Whenever Zach gets possessed or if something happens and he's like, I feel it in me. You had to finish your glass. Yeah. And that was the point. The problem is that every 20 minutes we kept having to refill because there was always something ridiculous.
So when did you call 911 for alcohol poisoning?
We made it to the end. To tell you the truth, though, the parts of the movie that I thought were really good, I think that Mike Maginot, I don't know about you guys, but he seems like a nice enough guy, and he's obviously intelligent. But I think he likes being famous.
Yeah.
Am I alone in that?
No, I think, people get a little bit of attention, their 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
And I think, that's hard to say, how anybody would react. But he is a Catholic priest, right? The actual Roman Catholic priest, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
he's a Catholic priest.
So was his exorcism sanctioned by the Vatican?
Yeah, they show that in the movie.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I must have fallen asleep.
He says something in, they're like, oh yeah, do that exorcism.
In the article, though, there was, it said, Maginot said Melzek must be the Bishop Dale. Okay, he wrote a report detailing his findings and asking Bishop Dale Melzek's permission to perform an exorcism on Hammond. Maginot said Melzek had never authorized an exorcism in 21 years as a bishop of the Diocese of Gary. Debbie Bosak, director of communications for the diocese, said she cannot comment on whether Melzek has ever approved an exorcism for confidentiality reasons. In general, she said, such an action would require a bishop's approval. Melzek initially denied Maginot's request to do a church-sanctioned exorcism. Maginot said, the bishop told Maginot to contact other priests who have performed exorcisms. Maginot said he needed other priests to give him the ritual for a minor exorcism, which did not require church approval. So he basically went online. The priests he consulted told him to look it up on the internet. So to me, that's saying like he didn't get the approval and he just went and found a thing on the internet. That same day, he said he did a quote, intense blessing on the Carolina Street home to expel bad spirits. The same day he performed a minor exorcism on Ammons. The ritual consisted of prayers, statements, and appeals to cast out demons. But it doesn't sound like it was an actual official exorcism from what I'm reading here in this article.
Father Malachi Martin would be very disappointed.
Yes. Well, yeah, you have to get the approval of the bishop. But yeah, from doing research in that area, it's very, very hard to find any information because they do keep it confidential as far as when things were approved.
And maybe they should, because you're basically asking them to perform some kind of for most people, some kind of intensely psychological ritual on someone. And they shouldn't just do that willy-nilly. This isn't the Middle Ages, and Catholics have learned to be careful because they do not have the impunity that they had in previous generations.
Well, here's something else that made me a little suspicious, perhaps.
Listen, Wendy coming in with her big skeptic
I know
bat.
I am, but listen to this. This was a really good article. So after doing that minor ritual, the one I found on the internet. I'm sorry, but
an intense blessing.
Maginot told Ammons to look up the names of demons that were tormenting her. Each demon has a name and personality, he said. A name has power, the priest added, and he planned to use those names to fight the demons during the exorcisms. So Ammons said she and a friend looked up the demons' names online. So they're like sitting on the computer, Googling demon names. And they're Googling like, which demons are the ones that possess kids? Which demons are the ones that, and representing the problems the family had been having. This just doesn't sound particularly legitimate to me as far as like from the Catholic exorcism standpoint.
If you're just Googling demons.
But that was the part that really made me suspicious. And Allison, you bring up a great point when you ask, and yes, we don't have that information because it's confidential, but based on what the researcher for this article is reporting, to me, it doesn't sound like there's much of a leg to stand on there.
Yeah.
No. The other thing we also talk about just access to the house being some kind of
like a
demonic
portal
thing. Like the people that had lived there before that had no problems and it wasn't weird at all, they revisit it with Zak. And then all of a sudden that girl has an issue. Like there's a teenage girl that has an issue and she needs to be exorcised. Or, well, she needs to have an intense blessing.
Exactly. Yep.
In order for her to feel better. And that family seemed really nice until that girl had the thing. And then my disbelief meter started.
Yep. Same here. They did seem nice. The kids were cute and everything.
And they're like, wait, we can get attention? And Zak Bagans will probably buy us
the movie.
Zach, he'll keep buying us dinner.
Yeah, it doesn't sound official. It doesn't sound like, because we know that the Catholic Church will use, working psychiatrists to determine whether an actual possession is going on. So it's more than just looking for the 4 signs of possession. We know that we have maybe 2. I don't know if we have anything more than that. But it doesn't sound like anybody was brought in, like a psychiatrist, and the people that did see the family had doubts about it, right? You were saying
yes.
One psychiatrist or psychologist expressed doubts or said that
Well, that wasn't a psychiatrist; it was a physician.
Oh, that was the physician. Okay.
So the thing is, what I think we should get to though is what do you think was the best evidence? So we've been pretty hard on Zak so far, and I mean that's because it's a long. It's a long episode of Ghost Adventures. It's not cinematic whatsoever. I paid $10 to watch a movie
Mike.
that I probably could watch that I could probably watch for free on the Travel Channel or whatever in a year. And so instead of just a money grab, which I'm not saying it was a money grab, but he's got to make that $35,000 back somehow. Let's talk about what he did find that was good. So what were the positive aspects of it besides the fact that we got a really good buzz on by minute 22?
Well, one of my favorite things was, this isn't evidence, but I like that we are introduced to the story through kind of home video from police officers, from DCFS agents, cell phone video. Like we get to kind of walk in with these initial people. And it was really cool to see that kind of footage. I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because, first responders, we know that, first responders sometimes come on a lot of strange things and have stories to tell. So, that makes you feel like you're part of the story.
Okay. Wendy, what did you think was positive?
Okay. I like the part where Zak stayed overnight in the house. Because regardless of not being able to talk to the family and whatever, you have this place with all these stories. You have complete unrestricted access to it. So
right, you own the house.
Right. So get in there, get the tools out. And, I thought it was really cool. And I respected the fact that he went in there overnight alone and he had him like nail, the plywood to the windows and everything. And they like locked him in.
And they like a 5-minute sequence of him looking at every boarded window.
But, that would be really scary. And while he was in there, there were some sounds and some visual anomalies that were really terrifying. And that's what I wanted really to see. However, well, I'll wait. I'll save my skepticism until you share.
Right. So best part of the whole thing was him staying overnight. The investigation with Barry Pav I thought was pretty good. From he was a parapsychologist that was involved made famous in the 1970s with the entity. I thought that the investigation was pretty interesting with him, and he was seeming like getting some kind of activity, and he was feeling weird. So Barry Paff had some kind of thing, and then had Barry Taft.
Yes.
Sorry, did I say Paff? He had organ failure, soon afterwards, and they tried to blame that on the demon house because it's unexplicable organ failure that an old man has investigating strange houses that might have carbon fricking monoxide in them.
Exactly.
Yeah, we should talk more about that in a little bit.
So I thought that was a pretty good, like, an investigation with a guy who's not a joker. Like, he wasn't some dude who had like a super long beard or whatever. That just walked in. It's like, well, I'm also in a death metal band, but I investigate ghosts.
Well, again,
it's a guy
the appearances, I don't think that's...
You're right. Absolutely. I appreciate the fact that Barry Taft went to college.
Yeah, and he's headed the UCLA parapsychology department for decades, and one of maybe the first or second in the country. So he's a very credible individual.
He's got the credentials.
Yeah, he's as they mentioned in it, the entity case, but he's really been involved with tons of really amazing stories on the west side of the country here.
So that was good to have him. I like that. You're bringing in an expert that's not a reality TV guy. Number one, that's good. Number two, he spends the night alone, and he's got the video camera. And what's the best thing he sees the whole time? Because the rest of it could just be in your head. The rest of it could just be anything. And let's not talk about the dramatic reenactments. Like, he could have picked, he could have got like indie horror directors to do the dramatic reenactments. Instead, he does it himself, and it looks like Unsolved Mysteries has a younger brother
with a newer camera.
Right. It was like Unsolved Mysteries had a younger brother who had to repeat 8th grade 3 times. And that's what we have. So let's not talk about the dramatic reenactments because they're a frickin' joke.
I liked them.
But they're fun. But okay, so he's in the house. He starts getting some pain in his head. He starts getting that the headaches. And he's like, "Oh man, it's going crazy."
His eyes.
And he starts hearing something in the distance. And they cut to the night camera of the Paris Hilton footage, and all of a sudden the camera goes out of focus, and you see a shadow walk past.
Yeah, it was scary.
That's the best thing we've seen.
Was.
Like, there's a shadow walking past an out of focus camera. Now, is that worth $35,000? I don't know. But is it something pretty cool? Like, that was the best thing we've seen. And then they kind of go past that. Zach's like, the pain in my eyes. He throws the TV and he hulks out. And he's like, oh man. He's like Colin Farrell at the end of the True Detective season when he does all the cocaine. And, he runs around and goes nuts. And then as soon as he's done with his freak out, he's like, we got to burn this place down. And then they demolish it in 2016, so we can't even investigate anymore. Zak Bagans can't even sell it at a profit at $36,000.
Right, but he did retain the pieces of it in the dirt so that he can put them in his museum.
Yeah.
So
it was a 90-minute trailer for come visit this in Vegas.
So I did think that was the best part, was seeing that, okay, he got some kind of footage.
Yeah,
that shadow's a real thing.
And the audio was too. The audio was scary. The stuff that he heard in there. Especially, yeah. But however, just bringing it back around, and I hate to be the skeptic all the time, but
please do.
They did have a guy who inspected the house and confirmed in the documentary that the furnace was probably could be leaking carbon monoxide, that there was black mold in the attic, that could be, particles in the air and throughout the whole house. And so to me, it just, all these people getting sick, which they used as the argument to tear the place down because it's, it's so dangerous. It's making people sick. Well, yeah, because it's toxic. It's actual physical poison in the air. I just kept seeing one after the next, and I'm like, whether it's psychological or physical, people were being affected, and maybe it was demon or a ghost, but really, if there's carbon monoxide, and I know, Allison, that you've brought this up before as an awareness kind of thing, that seeing ghosts.
Yeah, because it could be a reason for people's experience of a supposed haunting. When you get these headaches and, you're dizzy and maybe you think you heard something, or you get these weird physical sensations, or you even see hallucinations, those can all be caused by carbon monoxide poisoning. And the awareness of that is not great. People think immediately that it's paranormal. Well, if that starts happening to you, hey, carbon monoxide poisoning can be fatal. So do check your carbon monoxide detector. Do make sure it's working.
Didn't carbon monoxide kill people we know?
Oh, I don't know
Allison.
about that.
Okay, so a couple of our cousins married into a family that like 12 kids.
Oh, yeah.
And they had like somebody's sister or something like that lived in Madison. They were living in Milwaukee. Somebody's sister lived in Madison, and they had 6 kids of their own. But the parents died of like carbon monoxide poisoning in their house.
That's terrible.
Oh, I did not recall that.
Both parents died, and so then the kids ended up having to move in. So it wasn't just 8 is enough; it was 18 is enough.
Yeah. So you got to watch out for that.
family.
It happens all the time, too. It's really sad.
People die of that stuff.
If you're like, why does everybody keep getting sick? And you can cause flu-like symptoms as well. Please check and get a carbon monoxide detector, or call your power company. Have somebody come in and check it out. Who are you going to call? Not Ghostbusters.
Well, Allison thinks it's carbon monoxide. I think it's fricking Satan.
Well, maybe it was caused by Satan.
But that's why I like the evidence that Zak found on his overnight, because like all of the other things were just anecdotal, like he got sick.
Could be interpreted, yeah,
right.
Sure.
But when we saw it on the camera, we saw the shadow go by. It's like, oh, okay, it wasn't just in his head.
Yeah, and there were little bits of EVPs captured throughout as well, including from some of that original footage of the the DCFS agents going in and getting an odd little voice here or there on their cell phones, and they're definitely not looking for that kind of a thing. So something like that pops up. That's interesting to me. So yeah, I'm just looking at CO. Nausea, dizziness, headache, obviously vomiting. So when you talk about like, feeling overwhelmed and suddenly sick, okay, it's not so sudden. But yeah, the mold is maybe more in line with the hallucinatory illusions that you could, if you have prolonged exposure to, cause all sorts of psychosis. Pretty interesting article here on the National Post about how many haunted houses might just have mold infestations.
Ah.
Well, and I think the demon house might be one of them.
So it might have been a good move for him to tear it down, because it's an actual public health hazard.
Yes. So I think we should close by talking about, is Demon House worth watching? So let's go around the horn. If you guys had to spend $5 to see Demon House, let's say you have to pay movie prices, but just $5, who would pay $5 to see Demon House? Allison.
No, I don't watch the paranormal shows at all. So yeah, I don't watch Ghost Adventures. I don't watch any of the other paranormal shows. I prefer my actual reality rather than reality TV. So
Wendy, $5 for the Demon House.
I don't watch very much of that stuff either, but I totally would pay $5 to see it again, just to be able to see the inside of the house and some of the actual eyewitnesses hearing what they said. Worth it.
Interesting.
Scott?
As somebody who does watch Ghost Adventures, I would just watch Ghost Adventures and not pay the $5.
Mike?
I would definitely pay $5 to see that, but I would sneak in a bottle of Jim Beam just so that you could play the drinking game.
We did find the right way to watch it.
Like, I got bombed with Zak Bagans. Like, I got
after
ghost
5
bombed.
minutes.
So we didn't even talk about the goat man.
Yeah.
Maybe the better, like the less said about the goat man and like his cameraman freaking out and seeing something strange in the elevator.
Let's just say there's plenty for people to find on their own if they choose to go see it.
Yeah. So we were actually just talking about the interesting parts of the movie. We didn't even talk about the goat man and whoever made that goat man costume. Have you guys ever seen Dragnet with Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's that whole scene with Pagan, the people against goodness and normalcy, where they dress up in goat leggings and people like. I think
pay $5.
Okay, Allison, we got Allison's $5.
But I think that Zach bought that Goatman costume from like the old Dragnet costuming department, because that's what the Goatman looks like. What I think was Christopher Plummer wearing that head in the movie. I can't remember because it's been like 10 years since I've seen it. But the thing is, the less said about the Goatman, the better. But it's one of the stupider aspects of the film. But he did get some cool evidence that's worth watching. So is that $5 of your time? If you like Zak Bagans, it is.
It is.
And you can have a good time watching it. So the Demon House gets 3 out of 4 recommendations or actually 2 out of 4 recommendations
50-50.
for $5. 0 from Allison. And Scott says, wait for TV. And next time, Zach, use a movie camera. Like it's like you're not poor. Like film is expensive.
But we're not shooting on it anymore.
But you could, or you could at least shot at like at least real digital video, because it looks like a video thing. But anyway, thank you very much, Scott and Allison, for joining us.
Thanks
for having us.
You're welcome.
Thank you for spending some time in the Demon House with us. And the thing is, Wendy, I think we need to go rock.
We do.
And I think we need to go rock and roll straight to
It's time to rock.
And here's a song this week. Welcome to the Demon House.
Welcome to the Demon House. Who in there? You're in the Demon House. Yeah, something totally weird happened to an innocent family. You better watch this at your own risk, 'cause evil's coming through your TV. Yo, you know, I had to buy this house. See, baby, 200 spirits creeping around. Shifting for the heat. I go on the ghost adventures, seen all kinds of Fortiana. I thought I was going to hell, but it's just Gary, Indiana. Welcome to the Demon House. Who in there? You're in the Demon House. There's shadows in the black closet, kids climbing up the walls. There's a pain rack in my brain and messing with my eyeballs. Yo, this place scores an 8 on the Demon scale. It's a portal that goes straight to hell. Just like Sunny Tale. There's old guys getting organ failure, devils messing with my crew. Who's down there in the basement? It's the Goat Man coming for you. Welcome to the Demon House. Who in there? You're in the Demon House. You even live wrong. Welcome to the Demon House. Oh God, it's the Goat Man. You're in the Demon House. Demon House.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
Hey, thanks for listening. And a great special thanks to all of the members of the Sunspot and See You on the Other Side Patreon community, the people who help us keep this going, keep it rolling. And a special shout out to Dr. Ned, a Patreon at a level where he gets his own custom shout every single episode. Thank you, Ned. If you'd like to join our community and become part of the hangouts we do each month and receive special releases of music and heads up on upcoming topics, have a say in some of those topics, please visit othersidepodcast.com/donate. Thanks again for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you next week.
Who in there?